title of my talk is Ensemble Kalman filter estimation of heat transfer parameters in a coupled general circulation model. I'd just like to acknowledge the contributions of my co-authors and also the funding from the CSIRO Decadal Climate Forecasting Project. The problem we're addressing today is one of model biases limiting predictability in general circulation models of climate. GCMs have unresolved subgrid processes which are parameterized, with many of the associated parameters known with little precision. And this contributes to model biases and hence limits predictability. For example, it is more difficult to produce realistic El Niño-La Niña dynamics in coupled general circulation models in which air-sea fluxes are also parameterized, as compared to ocean-only or atmosphere-only GCMs, which are forced by appropriate surface boundary conditions. So typically, one would run various simulations, each with manually tuned sets of parameters, and a somewhat qualitative determination is made, which produces the most realistic results. In the present approach, however, we develop a systematic and objective means for parameter estimation using the ensemble transform Kalman filter, focusing on parameters governing the air-sea fluxes, specifically the shortwave radiative heat flux. So in initial tests indicated that air-sea flux parameters, for all the air-sea flux parameters, those governing the shortwave radiative flux in particular yielded the greatest influence. Estimating other parameters were either found to be ineffective or produced numerical instabilities indicative of model form error. So the way that the shortwave radiation is represented in the model, radiation from the sun enters at the top of the atmosphere. It is then propagated throughout the volume of the atmosphere using an energy balance model. The point at which the radiation reaches the air-sea interface, some of that radiation gets reflected due to the ocean albedo, denoted here by alpha. And in the baseline case, alpha is a function of lambda, which is longitude, phi latitude, t is time, given by this expression here, where phi is the zenith angle of the sun. Of the radiation that is not reflected and enters into the ocean volume, the depth at which that shortwave radiation can penetrate is controlled by this shortwave length scale, again a function of longitude, latitude, and time. So the larger LSW is, the deeper the shortwave radiation can penetrate, the smaller it is, the shallower it can penetrate. So in that way, it's inversely proportional to ocean opacity. So these are the two parameters that we're going to be estimating using the ensemble transform Kalman filter, the ocean albedo and the shortwave length scale. And we're going to be estimating these both simultaneously and individually. So this is how the ensemble Kalman filter works. Maybe just taking a step back for a moment. Data simulation in general, be it an ensemble Kalman filter or some other means of estimation, modifies an imperfect set of simulations of reality with a series of incomplete and possibly noisy measurements y, ideally resulting in a better representation of the true system state, denoted here by x. So schematically, here I've illustrated four Earths, each starting with different initial conditions and also potential different parameters. In our system, we have 96 Earths, but here I'm just illustrating four for the sake of clarity. Each of these Earths are then simulated in isolation of each other, so independently. And then when an observation comes in, denoted here by this orange circle, all of the Earths are corrected to look a little bit more like this observation. And then this defines a new set of initial conditions, a new set of parameters, and each of those are then forecast again individually, and then another observation comes in, and then all the Earths are corrected again. So this cycle of forecast analysis phase is referred to, forecast analysis is repeated over and over again. Not only do we have the ensemble average of Earths, that's our best estimate of the state and best estimate of the parameters, denoted here by the red circles and lines. We also have a PDF of the forecast ensemble and also PDF or a sample PDF of the analysis ensemble or the corrected ensemble. So the way that this second ensemble is created, or the analysis ensemble, it's given here. So the state analysis of ensemble E time t is given by the forecast ensemble member plus the Kalman gain multiplied by the distance the observations are from our observed state, where H here observes the model state the same way that the instrument or the satellite observes the Earth, where the subscript E here denotes ensemble member number, Superscript F denotes forecast ensemble, and superscript A denotes analysis ensemble. Here, the Kalman gain essentially balances model uncertainty, which is estimated by the sampled state error covariance, PF. This is sampled across the ensemble, and a prescribed observational error covariance matrix. And this is prescribed uniquely for each observation type. So sea surface temperature, satellite observations have a different R as to sea ice concentration satellite measurements, for example. So some of the details of the system that we're using, our system is called the Climate Analysis Forecast Ensemble System, or CAFE. It uses the Ensemble Transform Kalman filter variant, designed specifically for high-dimensional geophysical models. As I mentioned before, it has 96 ensemble members, 10 to the 8 model states. It requires 10 to the 4 CPUs to march the full ensemble forward in time and then solve the Ensemble Kalman filter problem. We have a suite of observations from the ocean, the atmosphere, and the sea ice. And the model itself is from the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab. It has 2-degree atmosphere, 1-degree ocean, and 5 sea ice categories. So getting into the results, the data simulation is undertaken during a period in which the ocean is well observed, specifically from January 2010 to December 2011. The state and the parameters are updated on a 28-day cycle, so every 28 days. The parameters exhibit a weak dependence upon time, as you can see by these globally averaged values of the parameters. So the black line here is in the baseline case, what the globally average shortwave length scale is. The red line is the shortwave length scale estimated in our DA experiment when we're estimating only the shortwave length scale. And the green is a shortwave length scale when we're additionally estimating ocean albedo. And over here, the black line is the globally averaged baseline albedo. The blue is when we're estimating only albedo, and the green is when we're estimating both albedo and shortwave length scale. So for the second half of these DA experiments, all of these estimated maps are, I would say, independent of time. Also, the distribution of these maps look far more like known model biases. For instance, this warm temperature bias in some ocean, as opposed to any observed ocean optical properties one would expect. So the best way to assess if we've made an improvement to the model is to use these parameter maps in a freely running model. So now not in a DA environment, but one where we're now running 96 climate models, using these learned parameter maps and running them forward in time in an out-of-sample period and comparing them to observations. So whilst all of the parameter estimation cases within a DA context were shown to improve the fit to the observations, whilst we're using the Ensemble Kalman filter to consistently correct back to the observations, in this freely running sense, it's only the case in which shortwave length scale alone is estimated that we have reduced error as compared to the baseline case. So here, this is the sea surface temperature mean absolute deviation globally averaged. The black line here, everything starting in 2012. The black line is the error of the baseline case with respect to observations. The red line is the shortwave only case. You can see a reduction in error. Either of the cases where we're estimating alpha or albedo, either individually or in conjunction with shortwave length scale, produce worse results. This is also the case when we're looking at positive bias and the negative component of the bias. Again, the red line is the red line, or the shortwave only case, is the only one to systematically have reduced bias for all time. And the maps of the average bias during this period from 2016 to 2020 also showing the same thing. So here, this is the observations minus the baseline case. You can see the baseline case is too warm compared to the observations. And it's only this situation, or this case, where we're estimating only shortwave length scale, the corrections going in the other direction at all points in space. So we're cooler where we need to be cooler, We're cooler where we need to be cooler, and we're warmer where we need to be warmer. The dashed hatching in this figure illustrates regions in which there is no statistical difference between the baseline and the estimated case. Okay, so it also makes an impact on the ocean structure itself. Here, these are changes in mixed layer depth per season. So this is the baseline case. You can see the seasonalities. This is the December, January, February average of mixed layer depth in the ocean, or the depth of the well-mixed region in the ocean boundary layer. The mixed layer is deeper in the winter hemispheres because the formation of sea ice increases the salinity locally within the ocean and hence increases density. And when we look at the difference between the estimated case and the baseline, you can see there's a systematic shallowing where shortwave was estimated to be small in the parameter maps, and a deepening where the shortwave was estimated to be large, as you would expect. But you might also notice that even though the parameters are independent of time, the influence that they have on the model is seasonal. So you'll see that there are larger changes to the model where the mixed layer depth is deeper. So in that way, these parameter maps are serving not simply as a shifting or an offset to the model, but is modifying how the dynamics are behaving. So in conclusion, the Ensemble Transform Kalman filter is used to estimate spatially temporally varying parameter maps of ocean albedo and ocean shortwave e-folding length scale on the basis of 28-day forecasts of a coupled climate atmosphere ocean sea ice general circulation model. The estimated parameter maps in these DA experiments resemble known biases and improve the in-sample fit of the coupled GCM to a network of real-world observations during the period 2010 to 2011. However, only the multi-year forecasts using individually estimated map of shortwave length scale systematically improved out-of-sample skill during 2012 to 2020. To our knowledge, this is the first attempt at undertaking parameter estimation on GCMs of this size and complexity. And whilst parameter maps appear aphysical, there is a precedent for aphysical parameters in turbulence modelling, where eddy viscosity, for example, has been shown to be anisotropic and also negative for certain scales. However, in future work, we'll be looking to estimate other parameters, such as turbulent mixing. Okay, thank you for your time.